Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back once again to Maximus the Fourth. Today, I'm going to be walking you guys through a very massive Pepsi S Tier List, where we're going to be taking a look at 39 different flavors of Pepsi that I've tried throughout the years. One of my subscribers, several months back, recommended that I should do a Pepsi S Tier list. I do not remember who you are, but I did not forget the suggestion and I loved the idea. Now here I am. 39 different flavors of Pepsi. And for those of you that saw the thumbnail, if you saw my face like this and I looked overwhelmed, it's because I was. There was no act about it. And if you want to just take a quick little gander at all the flavors that I have to get through, yeah, that's a freaking ton. But I'm very confident with my ability, and I'm going to take a look at every single last one of these flavors of Pepsi and give you guys a very, very brief history lesson on all of them. And then I'll give you my review on how I think they score based on me trying them in the past. And each and every last one of them are going to freaking go on this Pepsi S Tier list. This is just a handwritten paper S Tier list that I made. And S is basically a 10 out of 10. A is 9 out of 10. B is 8 out of 10. C, 7, so on and so forth. You get it. And the flavor that we're going to start with today is going to be Pepsi made with real sugar. Now, although this is not the very first flavor of Pepsi that ever came out, the reason why I'm going to start with this one is because when Pepsi first came out in the late 1800s, it started out with real sugar. But the problem with it is that back in those days, sugar was very expensive. So Caleb Bradham had to back out of using sugar and basically started formulating this syrup that he could sell to his customers to buy. And it was basically a syrup where you just kind of made your own Pepsi by using the syrup, just by following the directions. And in this video, I'm not going to be trying any of the drinks because I've already tried them. I'm just going to give you my review on them. But Pepsi made with real sugar, I actually really liked it. The best way I can describe it is because of the natural sugar that was in it, it was like a suppressant of the actual Pepsi taste that has high fructose corn syrup. And so I probably would have given this one a 7.5 out of 10. So boom, there's the first one, right in the middle of B and C, because it's a 7.5 out of 10. Now, with all these flavors of Pepsi, I'm going to try to do them chronologically, based on the oldest ones to the newest. And the reason why I did this one, like I said, was because Pepsi started out with real sugar. Let's get on to the next one. Okay, next up, what we have here is Pepsi Light. Now, Pepsi Light came out in the late 70s, if I remember correctly, and there were a lot of people that were complaining about Diet Pepsi's original flavor. They just thought that it tasted way too artificial, and a lot of people could not get used to the super artificial diet taste of it. And so the idea behind Pepsi Light was to come out with a flavor that was going to be still on the diet side, but to have more of a natural tasting flavor to it. And Pepsi Light had lemon mixed in with it too, is part of the formula. And as they were moving along with Pepsi Light, it used to be like, I think it was a no-calorie drink, but then they rose it up to about half the calories of what normal Pepsi has to try to retain some of the good flavor of Pepsi, but still not being a drink that was going to get you fat. Now, although the bottle was not fresh when I tried it, I can't give you super accurate score on what I thought about it, but based on how old this bottle was when I tried it, I would give this a very fair 6 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Cherry Pepsi. This first came out in 1985 in competition for Cherry Coke. Pepsi had received the news in Ontario, Canada, that Coca-Cola was coming out with Cherry Coke, and so they very quickly started to form a team called Rambo, which was the code name, and they went on an all-out dogfight, goose egg chase to beat Coke. In just hours before Coke could put their Cherry Coke on the shelves, Pepsi beat them just by hours. Now, Cherry Pepsi in Ontario, Canada, was the very, very first Pepsi flavor of cherry that ever came out. I mean, the very first one. And this right here is a promotional can from Ontario, Canada. And this was actually the full can that I had bought on eBay, along with another lot of cans. And this was a live can of Cherry Pepsi that I actually got to try for reals. And when I was trying it, I thought it tasted rather kind of coppery because the can was so old. But based on what I had tried, I actually really enjoyed it. And I would give Cherry Pepsi a 7.5 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Cherry Cola Slice. Now, this is not a flavor of Pepsi, but it was the very first cherry cola flavor of soda that Pepsi ever created in the States. And I have tried a bottle of this before, and it tasted rather fruity and very fresh, surprisingly very fresh for how old it was. And Pepsi had come out with a line called Slice in, I believe, 1982. But in 1986, they came out with 3 brand new flavors to expand on their brand, which was apple, mandarin orange, and cherry cola slice. And just within 2 years, in 1988, cherry cola slice was discontinued. So this is one of the most rare, highly sought after prizes in the history of all Pepsi collectibles, standing next to a Mountain Dew Red. Now, although that cherry cola slice was discontinued in 1988, it did not disappear everywhere off of all store shelves. I actually still I have a bottle that came from 1993 that I bought from a seller on eBay, and he explained that to me. And this was a guy that actually had worked for PepsiCo since 1979 to 2001. And I actually really liked this. It had an amazing flavor, especially for how old it was. So I would give Cherry Cola Slice a 9 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Wild Cherry Pepsi, an original can from 1988. This was actually the replacement of Cherry Cola Slice. Now, mind you, make sure you know that Wild Cherry Pepsi is not to get mixed up with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Wild Cherry Pepsi eventually was discontinued in 2005 and replaced with Pepsi Wild Cherry, but we'll get into that later. Being we're on Wild Cherry Pepsi, and there's history with it turning into Pepsi Wild Cherry, the ingredients did not change at all in the new Pepsi Wild Cherry, but the formula changed. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, there were other ingredients that they nerfed down quite a bit from the Wild Cherry Pepsi to Pepsi Wild Cherry. And one of the massive differences in the Wild Cherry Pepsi is it had quite a bit more caffeine in it than the late Pepsi Wild Cherry. And after trying this, I actually thought it tasted pretty good. And this is the exact can that I actually found that I tried that was still full, sealed, and unopened. And this can is from 2003. Now, I could absolutely taste the caffeine in this, and it was crazy. And the flavor was actually very good for how old it was, and I was pretty blown away. So I would leave the original Wild Cherry Pepsi with an overall score of 8 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is an original bottle of Crystal Pepsi from 1992. This was discontinued in 1993, and it was due to poor sales. At first, it did well in 1992, but after the very first year passed, people just stopped buying it instantly. It did very poorly. And I actually did try this, and based on just how it smells here, because I'm not going to drink it, it has quite a turned sugar taste in it, and there wasn't really much going on. But for how old it was still pretty decent, so I would leave the original Crystal Pepsi with an overall score of 5.5 out of 10. I think my best shot and only hope in getting to try an original Crystal Pepsi is if one day I can find myself a bottle of Pepsi Clear, which was basically the same ingredients as an original Crystal Pepsi that came out in 2005 during the holiday seasons, only in Mexico. It is super freaking rare. Next up, what we have here is a drink called Crystal from the makers of Pepsi. Now, this is the second and only other flavor that is actually not a Pepsi flavor, but it was made from Pepsi, just like Cherry Cola Slice, and these are the only two non-direct Pepsi flavors that made it on this list because there's so much history. Now, after the failure of Crystal Pepsi from 1992, and it was discontinued in 1993, I believe in 1994 is when they came out with Crystal from the makers of Pepsi, and everyone called it Crystal from Pepsi for short, but it was a lot different than original Crystal Pepsi because it had a new citrus taste that was in it. And I actually had the honors to try this thing live on camera because my buddy DJ Glowing Ice was so kind enough to send this thing to me. And mind you, he scourged the living daylights out of eBay for 2 years to find 2 bottles of this, and he still gave one up to me. And although it was a very old bottle, I rather enjoyed the living daylights out of it. I thought it tasted very good for how old it was. And because of how unique it is and how rare and overall the taste, I would definitely leave this with an overall score of 8 out of 10. Just so you guys can take a quick peek, this is what the S tier list is looking like so far. So far, nothing has made it on C and nothing has made it on S tier yet. Let's continue. Next up, what we have here is a regular bottle of Pepsi. This is just regular Pepsi that's been around for years. I think this has been steady since 1988. And they've pretty much been using the high fructose corn syrup for the most part on the mainstream since 1988. So it's been this way that Pepsi's been made for about 36 years. And original Pepsi, modern day Pepsi with high fructose corn syrup, I think it tastes okay. It's not absolutely spectacular, but it definitely will hit the spot more than not. And so overall, because there's so many other flavors of Pepsi that I like so much, I would give regular old Pepsi a 7 out of 10. Okay, we got that C filled out now. Still nothing on the S tier part. Let's keep going. We got a lot of work to do. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Twist. Now, Pepsi Twist was first taste tested in 1999 in Pepsi's labs, and then it was officially brought and introduced in 2000 in the United States on July 12th, and it was discontinued in 2006 due to poor sales. So the first run lasted for 6 years, and then it was reintroduced in 2008 as Pepsi NFL. And to this day, it is now still discontinued in the States, but some countries you still can find Pepsi Twist, such as Poland. And luckily, I was able to buy myself a fresh can from Poland and try it. And I thought they did a really nice job with mixing in the lemon flavor. It wasn't overly bearing to the Pepsi. In the Pepsi, you could still taste it very well. but the lemon it definitely made it better than original Pepsi. And so my overall assessment on Pepsi Twist, I would definitely give it an 8 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is an original bottle of Pepsi Blue. And I believe this one is from, it doesn't matter, but it first came out in 2002. It was discontinued in 2004 because of a very highly controversial coloring agent, which at the time I believe was Blue Number 1. And it immediately disappeared from both the States and Canada, and it had remained in places like the Philippines, Malaysia, and other places. Not very many, though, other than the Philippines and Malaysia. I think it was in Mexico for a little bit as Pepsi Panas, but then they changed it to Pepsi Blue, the name as well. And just by smelling this amazing flavor, it brings me right back to my freaking childhood. It's just incredible. I absolutely loved original Pepsi Blue, and I have a very good idea on what I would score this. It's not perfect, but I would absolutely give an original vintage bottle of Pepsi Blue a 9 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Vanilla. Now, Pepsi Vanilla was first introduced in competition to Vanilla Coke in 2003, and Vanilla Coke had come out in 2002. Pepsi Vanilla was discontinued in 2008, and then 11 years later, in 2009, it finally came back, and this is what the design has looked like for years since the release has come back. I absolutely love Pepsi Vanilla. It is one of my favorite sodas of all time, and it is incredibly good. I give it a perfect score of 10 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Holiday Spice. Now, Pepsi Holiday Spice was a limited edition Pepsi Cola flavor that was launched in November of 2004. It had a spicy finish with notes of ginger and cinnamon, but some say it also contains cloves and nutmeg. And after doing further research on this, when I reviewed this originally, they had a scent in there that was a lot more of a settled spice and not just a spice, kind of like pot pourri, which is basically flower petals that have this scent that comes off of them, that people generally store those flower petals in their drawers, like dressers, things like that, china hutches. And just to take a tiny sip of that, because I didn't remember exactly what it tasted like, that's actually pretty stinking good. I would definitely give that an 8 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Wild Cherry. Now, like I told you guys earlier in this video, Pepsi Wild Cherry was actually originally named Wild Cherry Pepsi. After 17 years, from 1988 to 2005, they switched up the ingredients. And one thing that was different is the new Pepsi Wild Cherry had less caffeine in it. And the original can of what Pepsi Wild Cherry looked like actually looked just like this, except this is a promotional can for the Chicago Air and Water Show, but that is still exactly what the original can looks like. It has this exact design, and it says great new taste. I actually do think that this one tastes better than the original Wild Cherry Pepsi. And I actually agree with my buddy DG Glowing Ice on this. I would definitely give this a 9.5 out of 10, and it's not perfect. The only reason why is because it has a little bit of a syrupy taste, which just doesn't taste completely natural, but it's pretty stinking close. So 9.5 out of 10 is what Pepsi Wild Cherry gets. And for those of you that are curious, just take a little gander at what this S tier list is looking like now. Kaboom. Let's continue. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Lime. Now, Pepsi Lime was first introduced in the United States in 2005, and then it was discontinued in 2007. It was then brought back alongside two other drinks that were brand new, Pepsi Berry and Pepsi Mango. And this was the first time both of these flavors had ever come out, while it was the return of Pepsi Lime. Now, after reviewing Pepsi Lime, I thought that they did a fantastic job with mixing in the lime with the soda. Very much like the Pepsi Twist, except it had a lime flavor in it instead of lemon. They did just as good of a job infusing the lime, so I give this one an 8 out of 10. Now, just so we don't get completely confused here, I'm going to go ahead and just tell you guys what I think about these ones. First, we'll do Pepsi Berry. This came out as a limited time only in 2019, as you guys know, and it was cut very short. It had a very short lifespan. To this day, I don't think it's still ever been out other than the year that it came out in 2019. And this was actually a pretty stinking amazing flavor. I absolutely loved it. This is one of the best Pepsi flavors I've had of all time. It was so darn good. And the best way I describe this one is it if anything is Pepsi Blue in the dark caramel color, this one would be it. And I really enjoyed this one a lot. In Pepsi Berry, it's not absolutely perfect, but it definitely gets a 9 out of 10. Pepsi Mango, I just reviewed this the other day. Very simple. They did an even better job with infusing the mango than they did with, well, they did just as good of a job as the lime and the Pepsi Twist, but it tasted sweeter, and because I have a massive sweet tooth, I think this one tastes better than Pepsi Lime and Pepsi Twist, so this one gets an 8.5 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Jazz. The Pepsi Jazz, it first came out in 2006. The Pepsi Corporation launched Pepsi Jazz, a flanker of their Diet Pepsi product, after considering the names Splurge and Indulge. The drink came in 3 0-calorie desert-themed flavors. There was Jazz with black cherry and French vanilla, this is the only one I have. And then the other two was Jazz with strawberries and cream, which I don't have. And then the third one was caramel cream. Because this is a diet soda and they never came out with actual real sugar, only diet, unfortunately, you can't hardly taste anything, and I've never had any good luck with tasting any diet sodas. Other than Pepsi Light, that was the only one that I could still give a fair score, with it being a diet flavor, because it just had a little bit of freshness to it. But this one, I don't really get anything at all. It's not a 0 by any means, but I would for sure place this on, I would give this a 3 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Cherry Vanilla. Now, this was first released in 2010, and then it was discontinued, and it came back in 2015, 5 years later during the holiday seasons. Then it got discontinued and came back out again in 2016 for Valentine's Day. And then it pretty much stayed on store shelves until about 2019, but then it started cutting back a lot, and you could still find Pepsi Cherry Vanilla only in some regions of the States. To this day, it's very, very hard to find. You can't find it anywhere, like on eBay or Amazon, but I still do think that there are some very, very limited states, maybe Massachusetts, that has Pepsi Cherry Vanilla, but it is very hard to find. I mean, very hard. And I've tried it before, and I would give Pepsi Cherry Vanilla an overall score of 8.5 out of 10. It's pretty good. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Vanilla, which was a part of Pepsi's line of Pepsi made with real sugar. They did this with, well, as you can see, normal Pepsi made with real sugar. And they've also done it with Pepsi Wild Cherry, but I've never tried that one before. But this one was amazing. I actually think that this one might be just a little bit better than the original Pepsi Vanilla that had high fructose corn syrup in it. And the normal sugar, real sugar that's in this, it just is unbeatable. And so, like one of the very, very few Pepsi flavors, I will give the Pepsi Vanilla made with real sugar a 10 out of 10 also. And I almost forgot to give you guys the history on this, but Pepsi Vanilla made with real sugar first came out in 2014, and it actually lasted for a pretty long time, a very, very solid, robust run until up to 2018. But this stuff, holy crap, you just can't find it anywhere. And it's probably more than likely definitely discontinued, but there is a chance that you could find this in some states, but nobody is reporting it. So if it is available in any states, nobody is reporting it. Plain simple. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Fire. Now, believe it or not, Pepsi Fire was originally released in most Asian areas for a limited time only from 2004 to 2005, alongside with Pepsi Ice. And it eventually got discontinued, and it only lasted from 2004 to 2005. In the summer of 2017, however, which this is where this bottle came from, the first release never made it in the States. It was released for a limited time in the States in 2017 and Canada, but only as a Slurpee variant there. Now, Pepsi Fire, just to get a little refresher on the taste. The best way that I can describe and what this tastes like is it's kind of a lot like eating a Fireball Jawbreaker. And because this has been sitting for so long, it has lost some of the intensity to the spice to it. But it's actually quite a bit spicier than Pepsi Holiday Spice here. And I think that it might taste just a little less better than Pepsi Holiday Spice. So overall, after just all the times I've tried it, in the little tiny sip that I'm taking here, I would give this a 7.5 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Salted Caramel. Now, this was released very, very close to the same time as Pepsi Fire when it had made the US run, but it was officially released in stores on November 6th of 2017 until the discontinuation of December 31st of 2017. In the United States, it was a limited edition cola flavor for the holiday season of 2017, and it was later released in Vietnam in December of 2018, then discontinued in March of 2018. My overall thoughts on this one, just oh my gosh. Holy freaking crap. That is going bad. That is actually a little bit frightening. I've never seen a soda go bad like that before, but you can see some crazy, weird floaties in there. I guess these, you can't just save soda if it's not already prior sealed, but from what I remembered on this, it actually tasted pretty decent, and I'd give it a, from what I can remember, an 8 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Crystal Pepsi from the later release of first starting in 2015. However, this is a US bottle that was released in 2018 for that run. And then this is a Canadian bottle that came and was released, I think it was in 2022. And There was actually a little bit of a difference between the Canadian version and the US version. The Canadian version had more of a real sugar in it than the high fructose corn syrup that the States had. And I actually, just trying Crystal Pepsi again here real quick. Yep, that's all I need. That's a 7.5, or a 7. And I give the Canadian version probably, wow, there's still fizz in that one, 7.5. Yeah, so the US Crystal Pepsi, 7 out of 10. Canadian one, 7.5 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is a can of Pepsi Pineapple. Now, Pepsi Pineapple was actually first originally released in 2019, and then it was discontinued and it came back in 2023, 4 years later, and this is the Little Caesars promo exclusive can. And they used the same exact ingredients as when it came out in 2019. And I liked this one a lot. I thought that the pineapple was a little bit overbearing on the Pepsi, but it was a good overbearing. And I would say that this one, it's about 65% pineapple and 35% Pepsi. And I thought they did a very good job. I give Pepsi Pineapple an 8.5 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi White Peach Oolong. I believe this first came out in 2021, and to this very day it might be discontinued, but I'm not sure on that. But what I do know is this was pretty much a Japan exclusive, and based on the smell that I could do on this, I do remember the flavor just by smelling it, and I have noticed that I feel like a lot of these Japanese sodas, they don't seal near as well as a lot of some others might. And oh my gosh, I can see my video is part of the mainstream if you Google Pepsi White Peach Oolong. And I don't have time to watch my video, but just based on smelling this thing, I feel like the bottles aren't sealed as well in Japan as the States. And so this causes the sugar to turn sour a lot faster. And when I tried this, it didn't taste spectacular, but it also didn't taste absolutely horrible. So I give Pepsi White Peach Oolong an overall score of 6.5 out of 10. Okay, it's time for the checkpoint. Look at all those flavors of Pepsi. Let's keep going. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Blue from 2021. Pepsi Blue finally came back after, let's see here, 2014, 2017 years. And I definitely did not like this one near as much as I did the original Pepsi Blue. And just taking a look right here, the original Pepsi Blue I gave a 9 out of 10, but let's just try this one real quick. Yeah, it tastes a lot more artificial. It's just not near as fresh tasting as an original Pepsi Blue, but still pretty good. So because of that, I will give Pepsi Blue from 2021 an overall score of 8 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Apple Pie. This was actually one of the very first Pepsi sweepstakes items that came out, and you could not buy this on stores. Basically, the story goes like this. To start things off in 2020, when the COVID had first hit, a lot of people were locked indoors, but Pepsi wanted to help encourage people that you can do things when you're locked up and you can't go out, such as baking a pie. And so what Pepsi did is they challenged people to make a video or take a picture of them baking a pie, and the creators of Pepsi understand that baking an apple pie can be a very difficult thing. So if anything in this challenge, they actually encouraged failure so you couldn't lose. And basically the first 1,600 people that sent in their video or picture to PepsiCo on, I think it was Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, one of the three, or even TikTok, they selected 1,600 lucky winners to win a bottle of this. And it was Pepsi released limited edition apple pie flavored. Pepsi describes the soda as having notes of cinnamon, crisp apples, and a buttery crust. Pepsi released the soda as a way to offer a safe option for amateur bakers who might not be able to bake an apple pie. And in the article, I remember it says that it has a taste that if it were to describe what nostalgia tastes like, this would be it. Now, I thought that they fused this very well together with the apple pie, and it was pretty stinking good tasting. I wish I could have tried it when it was fresh and when it wasn't flat, but I thought they did a very, very good job. And so, overall, what I would give this is an overall score of 8.5 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Cracker Jack. This was another very rare numbered Pepsi sweepstakes item that you could not buy in stores. You had to win it, and basically Pepsi partnered up with Cracker Jack, the company themselves that makes this famous, it's almost like a moose much type of popcorn that is served in ballparks. And what you were to do to enter into your chance to win, which is a box that comes with one of these cans with 3 separate packs of Cracker Jack treats, is you had to post a video of yourself singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And I think this was either on Twitter or Instagram. And they didn't make very many of these. I think there was only like, I want to say 2 or 3,000 winners of this. So that's a pretty rare can. But I actually thought that the caramel that was in this was rather off-putting, and I don't think they did a very good job on this, which was very disappointing. So because of how they formulated something that didn't taste like I should, I'd give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Hot Chocolate. It was originally named Pepsi Cacao Cola, but because it was way too close to Coca-Cola, Pepsi had put a plastic label over this, which I ripped it off, but it's known as Pepsi Hot Chocolate. And this is actually my favorite soda of all time. I've never had a better tasting soda, and this is absolutely going to be the number 1 on the S tier list, hands down. But the story of this one is that in January of 2021, Pepsi gave out a limited edition hot chocolate flavored soda to people who participated in a social media contest on National Hot Chocolate Day. The drink was inspired by a Twitter challenge where fans retweeted their posts of 2021 times to unlock a new cacao-inspired innovation. The post received over 6,000 retweets in hours, and the test kitchen team created a crisp chocolate and marshmallow flavored beverage. This was a Pepsi sweepstakes item that you could not win. And as you can see right here, clearly it says not for retail sale, as do all the other Pepsi sweepstakes items. And what you were due to try to win one of these is to post a picture or a video of yourself, I think it was on Twitter, of you holding up a cup of hot chocolate on National Hot Chocolate Day. It had to be on National Hot Chocolate Day. And they selected 2,500 winners to win a box where they sent 2 of these to the winners. So based on the 2,500 boxes times 2, because there was 2 sodas in each box, there were only 5,000 of these ever made in the entire world. And this is a 10 out of 10 and more. There is no better soda than this one on the entire S tier list. Absolute 10 out of 10 and beyond. Amazing soda. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Maple Syrup. This was yet another Pepsi sweepstakes item that you could not buy in stores and not for retail sale. Once again, you had to win this. And in March of 2022, Pepsi and IHOP released a limited edition maple syrup flavor called Pepsi Maple Syrup Cola. The drink is described as combining Pepsi Caramel's flavor with IHOP Pancakes maple syrup flavors. In March of 2022, Pepsi also announced a social media giveaway to promote Pepsi Maple Syrup Cola. To enter, participants had to post a picture or video on Instagram or Twitter using the hashtags #ShowUsYourStacks, and 2,000 people were selected for the giveaway. And in each of those boxes, 2,000 boxes, there were two of these. So very rare once again. They only made 4,000 of these cans, and overall I thought they did a fantastic job with mixing the maple syrup. It actually tastes a ton like maple syrup, and it didn't hinder the Pepsi taste at all. Very well fused, and so I'd give this one a very, very solid 8.5 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Peeps. Now, Pepsi Peeps flavor soda was originally created in 2021 as a collaboration between PepsiCo and Just Born Quality Confections, which are the makers of Peeps. These Pepsi Peeps actually started out as a promotional item, just like any other Pepsi sweepstakes cans, and it came in this exact box right here. There was only 2,000 of these ever made, and it came with these three different cans: a yellow, a purplish or a pink, and a blue. And as you can see, the can that they came out with, this was from the limited edition release from 2023, and you can clearly see that the color is a lot more of a broken yellow than a solid yellow that the sweepstakes had. And I believe what you would do in order to win one of these limited sweepstakes items at the beginning is you had to send a picture on Twitter or Instagram, whatever, and post a video or a picture of yourself holding a bag of Peeps. And I think there was only 2,000 winners who won that. But this is an amazing soda. I loved it. They fused the marshmallow Peeps with the Pepsi masterfully, and this absolutely gets a 10 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Nitro Pepsi. Nitro Pepsi came out. It was developed in 2019, and it has been marked since March of 2022. The drink comes in an aluminum can containing a widget that infuses the drink with nitrogen when the can is opened. It's similar to some nitrogen canned draft beers like Guinness's. The beverage is also available in vanilla flavor. This was a very huge step up for Pepsi, and this actually made it on the mainstream very quickly. And it was to give the Pepsi consumers an overall different experience in trying it with tasting something that has nitrogen in it instead of the traditional carbon dioxide that we're all used to. Now, these are described to be smooth, creamy, and easy to drink. Now, the original Pepsi, I think I gave that like a 7 out of 10. And as far as this Nitro Pepsi goes, it's not much different. It is a little bit, it's quite a bit smoother and just as sweet as normal Pepsi, but I think it actually might taste a little bit better than normal Pepsi, so I would give this one a 7.5 out of 10. And then Nitro Pepsi Vanilla, actually, I did a video, does Nitro Pepsi taste like Pepsi Vanilla? And I actually gave this 80% of what Pepsi Vanilla actually is. It tastes very close, and so I give Nitro Pepsi Vanilla an 8 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi Cream Soda. This was a Japan exclusive, and I think that this actually came out in, 2022 in, it looks like February 11th. And this actually tasted very good. And the thing that they did so well on this one is they brought in a different color, for heaven's sakes. It was a cloudy white color, not see-through, but cloudy. And I thought this tasted exactly like Bazooka bubblegum. And to this day, I can still smell it. And I thought that this one was really good. And I would give this one a score of 9 out of 10. Next up, what we have here is Pepsi S'mores. This was another Pepsi sweepstakes item that came out in September of 2022, and it was released on the very last day of the summer in 2022. And what you were to do is, hold on here. Okay, so Pepsi and S'mores fans alike must act quickly to be one of 2,000 lucky winners. Starting today, fans can share an image or description of how they s'more on Instagram or Twitter with the hashtags Pepsi S'mores and Pepsi Sweepstakes, and follow at Pepsi for a chance to win a set of the limited edition Pepsi S'mores. So there were only 2,000 of these that were ever made, and this is the box that they actually came in. And what this was is you had 3 different flavors: graham cracker, chocolate, and toasty marshmallow. The thing that was so special about these is there was actually 4 different ways to mix these in order to make classic flavors to help optimize your opportunity to try to taste them all. And the first one is the classic, which was 1/3 graham cracker, 1/3 chocolate, 1/3 toasty marshmallow. And then the second one was marshmallow is for lovers, half toasty marshmallow, 1/4 graham cracker, 1/4 chocolate. Third one was for the graham, half graham cracker, 1/4 chocolate, 1/4 toasty marshmallow. In the last one was 2/3 chocolate, 1/3 toasty marshmallow. And I think there was like a splash of graham cracker. This was a very, very good freaking Pepsi Sweepstakes item, and the overall experience was amazing. I think the chocolate one is the best. And actually, the chocolate one is very, very close to being as good as Pepsi Cola Hot Chocolate, but it's not quite there. I'd give this one a 9 out of 10. The graham cracker a 7.5 out of 10, and the toasty marshmallow a 7.5 out of 10. And the overall experience, 9 out of 10. But I'll go ahead and mark these. Now, the final Pepsi flavor that we're going to be looking at is Pepsi Black Cherry Chocolate Gummy. This was a Japan exclusive that came out in 2023 during the summertime, which was like 8 months ago. And I remember exactly what this tastes like. Just so good. So good as in not like a 10 out of 10, but it had such a mystical taste to it. And you could taste the gummy in it. You could barely taste the chocolate in it. And they just marketed it so well. And this is one of the very few flavors that I would buy again and again and again. And DJ Glowing Ice and I actually gave this the same exact score. This gets a 7.5 out of 10. And that concludes the Pepsi S Tier List. Get a nice look at that. I will go ahead and show you guys from top to bottom. And feel free to just pause this video. You can zoom in the words with all the words with your fingers. Just pause the video, get a nice look at that, because this is my handwritten Pepsi S Tier List. Now, we're not done just yet, okay? I actually did forget to tell you guys about Pepsi Salt in Lychee. And I'm not going to open this bottle because I think it'd be far more profitable for me to just do a redo instead of just blow this on the Pepsi S Tier List. But what I think I might have remembered about this is I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. So we'll go ahead and put that on there. And I also forgot to do the Pepsi Orange as well. But I have tried this one before, and I have a pretty good idea on what it tastes like. This was actually in the earlier part of my YouTube career. And again, the way that the ingredients are put with these Japanese flavors is it doesn't take very long for the sugar to turn. just after a couple years, it doesn't taste very good. So I would probably give this one an overall 6.5 out of 10. And that is the end of the Pepsi S Tier list. Kaboom. Absolutely insane. But that's not all the Pepsi flavors. There's still tons out there. And I have two right here that I've never tried, which is Pepsi Pineapple. It was released, I think, in 2021 in Japan. And I'm going to do a video, and it's going to be called, Is Pepsi Pineapple... Does Pepsi Pineapple from Japan taste like Pepsi Pineapple from the States? I'm going to save that for later, so stay tuned for that. And then there's another, and I will redo... I'll probably redo both of these because it's been so long, and I think I could get some good traction off those. And then there's another funky Pepsi flavor from Japan that's called Pepsi Special. And I've never seen this in my entire freaking life. And I am really excited to try this thing out beyond belief. But there's a lot more Pepsi flavors out there in Japan that I've never tried. There's also flavors like Pepsi Max Lime, Pepsi Max Cherry, Pepsi Max Vanilla. I think all of those can be found in Canada. And if not, there's another place that I could find it in a different country, and it's going to cost a lot of money to get just one bottle of the Pepsi Max Vanilla, which is in a foreign country, far, far away from here. But let me update you guys on just a couple other flavors that are coming out this year. New Pepsi flavors that you guys have never tried and nobody's ever tried. And the two brand new Pepsi flavors that are going to be coming out is Pepsi Peach and Pepsi Watermelon. If you want to take a look at a little screenshot here, this is my buddy DJ Glowing Ice. This is where I got the information from. My editing is just so terrible that I have to show you a freaking computer screen. But there you go. Pepsi Peach and Pepsi Watermelon. If you are huge Pepsi fans out there, you got to keep an eye out for that because it's going to be pretty awesome. And I really hope to see Pepsi come out with more new Pepsi flavors because it is shaking up the world for us and it's so fun. And it's really good for reviewers like DJ Glowing Ice and I, even people like Papa Eats, Chris Frezza, to name a few. There's a few more soda reviewers out there, but there you guys have it. That was the epic Pepsi S Tier list. And if you guys have made it this far with me in the video, I thank you so much for watching all the way through. This took a lot of work, and I'm excited. So, to leave you with this, if you enjoyed this content, make sure you like and subscribe for more content in the future. And also, make sure you share this video with a buddy. And please leave a comment down below because it does help boost the algorithm. And make sure you check out my video, Black Cherry Cola Soda Shop 2-liter chug. I will link that down in the description of this video. And with that said, I am Maximus the Fourth, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you all.